This is Brent of the Brooke Bush Institute, and in this video I'm going to show you guys the hardest chop progression I've ever come up with. I'm going to have my friend Melissa come out and she's going to help me demonstrate the static single leg chop progression. So if you guys watched our last video on the static standing chop, this is the same thing but on one leg. Exactly. This is going to be tough. So in the last video, let's kind of think about what leg we're going to end up standing on, right? We talked about driving through the side closest to the band because we wanted to get a lot of abduction and extension force, which was going to get our glutes involved. And then of course, if we have the glutes involved and then the lat when we're pulling down, that's this posterior oblique subsystem. And we know that we're resisting this anterior oblique subsystem that helped meld and integrate those two subsystems, which is important when we talk about function and even when we talk about correcting postural dysfunction. Right? Now, the other way to look at this would be a little bit more from like a biomechanics standpoint. So if I have resistance pulling me this way, in order to get out of that, I would have to do abduction, right? I'd have to do some external rotation, and I'd have to do some extension to keep myself upright. That's great because those are all glute joint actions. So that's going to help drive through the glute, get a lot more glute involved. And we can think if we tried to stand on this leg, we'd end up having to try to like adduct with our inner thigh here, internally rotate with our inner thigh here. That's going to increase adductor activity. Guys, generally the adductors get overactive. Adding resistance or trying to strengthen the adductor specifically is usually going to get us into a little bit of trouble when we talk about postural dysfunction, movement impairment. That's how we get things like that functional knee valgus, right, that we know can start creating some knee pain or maybe even increase our risk of ACL injuries. Maybe it didn't, since the adductors are hip flexors, they could contribute to an anterior pelvic tilt. We don't want any of that. So we're going to stand on this leg. You ready? So this leg, just to make this a little bit more sport-like, I'm going to have you get all the way up into triple flexion. Right, so 90 degrees at the knee, maybe a little bit more than 90 degrees at the hip, a little bit more than 90 degrees at the knee, and then we're going to be dorsiflexed. You good? Your glute's going to be nice and tight on the left side. You're going to be drawn in. You're going to grab that band with two hands. Now I've talked about in how other videos, rather than trying to do a straight arm diagonal pattern, which just isn't a natural thing to teach, I've just gone to having my clients kind of do a diagonal press down motion, which seems to be a lot more natural and a lot easier to teach. And you can see Melissa kind of picks it up. It's like that old school tricep press down we all used to do, right? Melissa picks this up pretty easily. I know I lose a little bit on my moment arm that I would get this way. Obviously this is a longer level, but I can always just adjust the weight, right? Rather than trying to teach an unnatural pattern. Now I will say Melissa can increase her moment arm a little bit by, why don't you try putting your hands over the top of your knee? Yep. All right, now all of this talk about physics and biomechanics and human movement science and the subsystems is great, but we can't forget what the goal of this exercise is, which is move the arms, this stays totally stable. I want her to pretend like if she had a laser beam coming out of her chest, that laser light would hit the opposite wall and not move, right? So as steady as possible. And then just to screw with her, I'm going to do a 2-4-2 count. So you guys know about tempo markings. We got the 4-2-2 count, which was the focus on eccentric deceleration. We can do that. So she could go down for 2, hold for 2, back 2, 3, 4. But what's harder on this exercise is the focus on isometric strengthening at end range. So I'm going to have to go down for 2, hold 2, 3, 4, back for 2. Remember, yeah, the counts are seconds. It's not supposed to be 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. That's not what it's supposed to be. All right, so you can see this is a very, very hard exercise. Good, go ahead and relax for a second. Of course, I do like to use these bands. These bands are easy to throw around anything that's high, whether it's like a power rack that I'm doing squats on, whether it's monkey bars on some sort of functional piece of equipment, or a cable column like this. I can usually find something to wrap one of these bands around. I can carry it with me so that I can stay within my tight little circuit, right? Because I like doing those circuits, those integrated warm-ups, or my integrated rehab programs, or right into some resistance training would be really cool. Right? I like training that way. I don't like doing just this and then just something else and you get that set. It's just a big waste of time. You want to show them the bar while I'm talking? All right, so yeah, I like using the bands, guys, just because it's very, very portable, but we can use a bar, and this makes it all that much more challenging. All right, so Melissa's going to go ahead and get in the same exact position. Now, remember with the bar, she's actually going to pull down, so pull with the right hand. This hand is doing a chest press though. And I'm very careful to cue my clients and patients to chest press straight out so that they keep their chest pointing forward rather than trying to pull this way, which I find always turns into some sort of dynamic chop. I don't want rotation, I want anti-rotation. We're not necessarily training for movement here as much as we're training for trunk and core stability. Is that hard?
Yes.
Okay. Good, go ahead and relax for a second. Give you a few seconds rest before we kind of show them what that looks like from the side. Now, I will say on a personal note, guys, I do think this has a very high transfer to sport. Personally, I've noticed on the basketball court that I feel much stronger when I get good at this exercise for that play that we all have to do, whether it's taking that first step, we're cutting, we're trying to drive to the paint, we're trying to get around a defender, but it's that idea of like you have to take that step and lean in to your defender, right? You guys can imagine that if you get strong at this, like nobody's taking your space. You'll be able to hold your ground. And that's a very important aspect to a lot of positions in sport. So some of you guys might be thinking human movement, oh, that anterior oblique subsystem, posterior oblique subsystem stuff is really cool, and it really is, and this is great for rehab programs. But don't look at this exercise and think, oh, it's just for rehab. This is a great core activity for all of our athletes. I'd love to see a lot more basketball players, a lot more football players doing some standing core activity with all of that human movement science backing it up to really take performance to the next level. So as Melissa finishes off her left side and switches to her right side and balances herself out a little bit, you guys can leave your comments, questions, critiques down below. I really look forward to hearing from you guys on what you feel from this exercise, how hard it is. Did you feel anything on the field after doing this for maybe 3 or 4 weeks? Did you feel a little bit stronger? I look forward to hearing from you.